Hi guys, welcome to another episode. In this episode I'm going to show you my two chop saws. Both are the same brand, it's Evolution. This is Rage4, this is EvoSaw 355. For obvious reason, it is not apple-to-apple comparison, but because I use both of them to cut steel, I will share with you some of my thoughts about it. And before we get started, my apology for the dogs barking in the background. There must be something extremely important in the dog's world happening right now. So without further ado, let's get started. Currently I'm working on my desk, and the frame of this desk will be out of steel, and I will prepare some video about it. But I use steel profiles or square tubes, different sizes, different wall thickness. This is 2x4 in centimeters and 2 millimeters thick wall. Here is a 3x3 and also 3 millimeters thick wall. Cuts are like this, so either it's a 45 degree or 90 degrees. I'm not going to talk about all details about those saws, because there you can see in the saw's specification. This is just a few details. This is 185 millimeters blade. This is 350, something like this. What is important from my point of view is the power of those electric motors. This one has 1200 watts. The bigger one has 2200s, and in our voltage I need 10 amps fuse for this one, and of course half of this for this one. And I have fuses 16 amps, but it seems that the peak power consumption of this saw, because probably size of the blade is so high that I cannot have anything else plugged to the same circuit connected to this to that fuse. Otherwise it will trigger it. So it must be one 16 amps fuse dedicated for this saw. As you can see, the colors of those blades are different. Here we have an orange, that handle was orange as well, and here we have a blue one. The blue one is for steel, the orange one is a multi-purpose, and those are the default blades shipped with those saws. I didn't have a blade for steel. Now I got one. It's also a blue one. Looks exactly the same, just smaller. And this one is already dull. I cut around, roughly counting, 60-70 cuts of such square tubes. I didn't cut it as it is in the manual, but I will back to this in a minute. And this one I use for a year or two. I did at least 100 cuts, and it is still sharp and still works as brand new. So let's talk about some features from the user point of view. That saw weighs 9 kilograms, this one almost 30. So there's obvious that there will be quality difference. But this one is a way more convenient to operate. This one I can just grab and move around even with one hand. This one I have to think twice if I really want to move it. It is very stable, but moving it around in the shops like mine, which doesn't have a station dedicated for this saw, is not fun at all. So let's talk about the small one for a second. The first thing that you may see is this chain, and it's pretty funny but smart solution to lock this saw. Let's unlock it, and that's how it is. There's a cover, and as you can see the whole blade is covered, so it is very safe. Here we have this clamp, and it works. It works quite okay. Of course, there's a thin piece of steel here, thin pieces of steel here, but also the blade the saw is small. It's not meant to be used for huge elements. Also, this table is made out of steel, and if we flip it a little bit, you may see that it was enforced with the C profile with a few welds at the bottom. But that's not an issue for profiles like this one or even like this one. Here you can see also a piece of rubber that holds this element. And as I mentioned, I didn't do those cuts as they are described in the manual. They suggest to do diamond cuts. If you don't know what the diamond cut means, it's when the blade attacks this element not from the flat surface, but from the angle. So how I should do these cuts? It should be like this and locked in this position. But to be honest, I didn't feel secure and safe with this locking mechanism. I was, as you can see, it's wobbling a bit. So I used the biggest surface as I can to hold these elements. So all the cuts I did were done this way. Now it is pretty secure. What is an issue with this table, but this bigger one has the same issue, is there is an embossment on this table, and that's fine. And when you press here, it's okay. But pressing on this side, as you can see, it's not stable. But the big one has the same issue. I'm not sure why that surface is not in level with the other three actually, but it is as it is. This saw, because of the quality, of course, has a small issue with the angle cuts. I did just a few, and I did them working on the Christmas tree stand. But the problem is that this locking mechanism of this fence is not solid enough to handle bigger elements. So when I set an angle here, I used another set of clamps just to lock it, to tight those two elements together and keep this fence in a correct position. So let's talk about the bigger one. It's a real beast. I never had any issue cutting any type of steel, any size, even a flat bar 1 centimeter thickness, no issue at all. To unlock this blade, there's a small lock on this side, but it has the same feature. Yeah, it is fully covered, so it is very safe. Those fences are way more solid than in the smaller one. The table, it seems to be iron cast. I guess it is because it's very rigid. It's very solid. And about the diamond cuts, the saw is shipped with this element, and this is supposed to hold the cutting element in a correct angle. And with this element, with such solid fence and this clamp, this element is really securely held by this saw. So I wouldn't have any doubts to cut elements in this position. But of course, there is no way to cut 45-degree angle cuts with the diamond cuts. That's a completely different topic. But the 45-degree angle set on this fence is stable. I've never needed any other clamps to hold this fence on a position that I set, so it is very stable. And there's one more very important topic is dust collection, or actually in this case it is more like a chop collection. Here we have a special container for chops, and it is very efficient. Here we don't have. There is a adapter at the bottom, at the back of this saw, but I don't have any chop collector. So when I realized that the chop collection by this saw is not very efficient, chops were all over the place in my garage. Okay, what about the cuts itself? I cannot see any big difference between this one and this one in quality. Here I have some examples, like this one. There is no blue color, which means that there is no overheating elements. This is a 3mm wall. The same here from the straight cut. So no issues at all. This one is obviously a little bit slower than this one, but that's obvious. This one is a little bit less stable, and sometimes when the blade becomes more and more dull, it starts. Now I cannot show you, but it can a little bit twist. But in such small elements that I'm going to weld, it is not a huge issue anyway. But there's a huge difference in how small elements we can cut. I'm just hobbyist and I do only DIY. So this one is amazing when I do huge cuts of the huge elements. But if you are greedy as I am, and you do cuts like this, or like this, very small here, you may see I have already broken that cover, because one time the blade grabbed that cuts off and damaged my cover. So since then I do way bigger cuts like this using this saw. But with this one you can make a small cuts like this, or like this one, without any issues. And even I did dozens of cuts, I didn't have any issues with the flying cuts of around my garage at all. So which one is better? I would say that depends. If you have many cuts of the big elements, this one is for sure a way better choice, unless you do small cuts like this one. This one is a way more convenient to use, to manipulate, move over the table and do some random cuts, even the longer elements. So this one is very handy, but this one seems to be multi-purpose. So in theory you can cut wood, PCV pipes, steel. Steel is so dirty that I cannot see how I can cut wood after cutting steel. So if you cut wood and PCV pipes, probably you can use this as a multi-purpose. But once you start cutting steel, I would say it will stay for steel only. I like both of those blades, but I can see that I will use the smaller one way more often. And now having this steel dedicated blade, I hope that it will last at least as long as this one. So this is a very good saw blade, especially for DIYs. Actually, it's a chop saw. So thanks for watching and see you next time.